Welcome to European Stock Analysis channel. So in this video, I will talk about the monthly and the weekly expected high and low for Tesla, PLTR, NVDA, and AMD stocks. Because today is November 1st, 2025. So October, the whole month has been finished, completed. So the tips of these trend lines are effective for major resistance and the support for the next month. So all these kind of potential high and low are already generated and finalized for the next month or next week. So let's go through that and have a big picture of what is expected potential high and low for these stocks. So stay tuned and subscribe this YouTube channel, and so to show your support. And so this is the Tesla monthly chart and the Tesla weekly chart. So Tesla, it is closed above, slightly above this red resistance. So it closed well in October. So that means imply next month it will have a potential relatively good increasing momentum. So potentially, if it's opened above this green support trend line, $448, or even for this resistance dot, then if it can open above that and can be supported above this resistance level, and then it becomes a support, potential support. This is about $451, so it will have a potential to even increase to this $501. So for the whole month, next month. But if it's dropped below this green support trend line, $448, it may have a tendency to decrease to this $428. Anyway, either way, this is still a good support. $429 in case it dropped to this level, and it's very likely it can be supported above this $448. Then it still can be a temporary good support. And the next week, Tesla next week, and the last week it closed above this yellow trend line, so it still shows a good increasing momentum. Next week it may open high around this $467, or it may have a tendency to increase to the top, the most top yellow trend line, $478 for the next week. But if it increases to this trend line, definitely it will be safe to sell all your stocks, because it will still have a very high probability, at least, to drop it down to this green support trend line. Green support trend line around $451. So it is a potential support. And in case it dropped to this $439, it's still a good support for the next week. So the likely fluctuation range for the next week is around this green yellow trend line, and at least cover this green support trend line. So this is a Tesla, and let's go to PLTR. And this is a PLTR monthly chart. This is a PLTR weekly chart. So last month, it also have a good increasing momentum uptrend, and it closed slightly above this yellow trend line, and you see it still didn't increase to this top yellow trend line, about $206. So the next month, the tips of these trend lines are the potential high and low for the next month, if the last month, October, has been finished. So when the next month, the first day start, and then the actual real-time stock price will fluctuate around between this kind of trend lines. So the next month, PLTR, this 200 is still good support. If it opened above this $201 and have a tendency to increase, it may go upward first in the next month, or or if it dropped, if it opened slightly below this $197, $199, it may have a tendency to drop down to this green support channel line, $189. But anyway, this $189 for this green channel lines. So this is still a very good support for the PLTR for the next month. So it will have a tendency, if it first dropped down to this support line, it will have a tendency to increase it to this yellow trend line, $213. Or if it opened close to this yellow trend line, it will first go up and try to reach this 217. So it's very likely to be able to increase it to $218 for the next month. And then so the fluctuation range for the next month is between this $217 or $218 and this $189. So $189 on this green support channel line. So for the next week, PLTR is very likely to be between this $205 for the tip of this yellow trend line, and it may drop it down to this either this support trend line, and very likely to be able to also drop it to this $193 for this green trend line. So fluctuation range for the next week is about $205 and then $193. And for the NVDA, so this is the NVDA monthly chart, NVDA weekly chart. So NVDA last week when it pushed up to this 210, this resistance level, and increased a little bit, and still dropped down and closed much at a price much lower than this resistance level, 210. So it closed around this $202. So next week, it is very likely to be opened below this yellow trend line of $206 or around $203 and then push it up to this $206. So it will still have a tendency to drop it down to this green support trend line, $195. You see this, the color, the tips of this trend lines matches the color of this price in the y-axis. So this tips is corresponding to this $195 for the green color. So it's very, this is still good support for the next week. So the next week fluctuation range at least cover this $195 and $206. So the NVDA monthly potential high for this for the next month, the tips of these trend lines at least around this kind of a yellow trend line. That's the yellow trend line corresponding to this $212, and it may have a tendency to drop it to this $195 for this green support trend line. But anyway, for this green support trend line is still good support for the next month. The next month fluctuation range is at least cover this $195 and $212. Okay. If it increased on the top of this blue support channel line, $203 or $4, it may have a tendency to increase, but to increase it to the top yellow channel line, $219. But conservatively, it probably will increase it to this $211 and still have a tendency to drop, to pull back. And for the AMD, so this is the AMD monthly chart, AMD weekly chart, and this for the last month, it have a very good uptrend. It opened exactly on the top of this green support channel line. So when it opened on the top of this green support channel line, typically it implies it have a good increasing momentum, have an uptrend, and then it increased all the way up to this yellow resistance and have a still breakout and increased all the way to this red resistance dot. So typically, when the stock price increases to this red uh, resistance dot, then typically it will have a tendency to pull back and to start to drop. So the next month is the AMD. Potentially, it may open around or be slightly below this $264, and if it is still have a potential uh, uptrend, at most it will increase to this $278, but you need to be still very cautious. The higher probability is open around or below this $264 and then have a pullback. And when it dropped down to this uh, blue support trend line, $250, it may have a temporary rebound, and then, but it is still may not be able to be held. And then if it dropped below this $251, it will have a tendency to drop it down to this green support trend line, $235. But anyway, for this green support trend line, typically it will be a good support for the next month. So the weekly chart for AMD. So weekly chart, this yellow trend line already started to bend. So it implies it already the uptrend has already been weakened. So it will start to pull back for the next week. At most, it may increase up to this $259, but it will also possible it may just open below this $261 of this blue trend line and have a tendency to pull back. It may drop it down to this $255 and then have a temporary rebound. And so the next potential low may be also lies on this $245 of this lower level support blue support trend line. So the anyway, the fluctuation range of the next week is about this fluctuation range between this yellow trend line and this blue trend line or this green support trend line. So if you are interested in this kind of analysis, you are welcome to subscribe European Stock Trend Prediction channel or watch more videos.